Good morning, sunshines. So today we're going to talk about touring. Yay! A couple weeks ago we talked about festivals and competitions and all that sort of thing. Occasionally those will tour, but they're, again, once the show begins, as with competitions and festivals and summer stock and all those things, once the show begins, your job as a stage manager will be pretty close to what we have described. But there are some special, unique things about touring a show that's just nice to know before you sign a contract and get into the business of touring. First of all, there are 4 major types of tours, and trust me, they are completely different animals. The first type of tour is the First National or the National Tour. If there's a show that's currently running on Broadway, again, when it reopens, for instance, let's say Wicked reopens and is on Broadway. As a matter of fact, I've got a little video about the Wicked tour, so we'll talk more about it on the other side of the video.
What was important for me regarding Wicked was if I was going to leave New York and if I was going to leave a Broadway career, I wanted to make sure that I was with a show that was Broadway quality. I came out here for a year and it's 4 years later. That's how proud I am. Absolutely love it. I think the story's great. It's a spectacle. So, right now we're unloading 13 trucks to put the show up. It takes about 30 hours to put in. So it's a big show. But on top of that, it's got a story that has such heart to it that, I think that's really what caught me by surprise. On the road, because we change cities every month or so, we get to know a city. So what's kind of great is that, so we bring Wicked to St. Louis and we get to experience new restaurants, we get to experience, museums of that city, sports events of that city, all of that kind of stuff. And so people come in and they're all like energized and jazzed up, which helps us put on a really good show on the road. What I love about this cast in particular right now is that they're really good actors. We have really good actors. Sometimes you have really good singers that aren't, great at acting, or really good dancers that aren't great at acting. We have a really big group of triple threats. I'm really excited about the show right now. It's in great shape. People are really energized. We have a company that really wants to be doing this. We're lucky.
Again, 13 trucks full of scenery and costume and lights. That's a lot of 53-foot trailers that it takes them 30 hours to install. I don't know if you heard that, but 30 hours, if you're working 8-hour days, yes, is 3.5 days to install that. And so a lot of these First National companies will have what are called sit-downs. They will be in a venue for 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time. And typically you're going to have an East Coast company and a West Coast company, and that typically is just the scenery or the costumes. The actors will transition. So you'll have a bunch of trucks, 13 trucks that are going up and down the West Coast. You have 13 trucks that are going up and down the East Coast. And while they're performing in Los Angeles, for instance, they'll be setting up in Atlanta. And then after they finish the shows in Los Angeles, because it takes 30 hours to take it down too. So the company of actors will fly to Atlanta, where they've already installed the show, and perform there in Atlanta for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, while the company in Los Angeles is taking everything down, and then they're driving all the way to Seattle or to Denver or to some other venue over that 2 or 3 weeks, and then setting it up in that theater environment. Yes, those are national tours. They're great because they are literally the Broadway designs. Now they may have been adapted to go into a space, and here's as good a time to talk about this as any. All of these tours will have different versions of the tours. They will have the A version, which is everything they've got. Every bell, every whistle they got. You've got plenty of fly lines, you got plenty of loading dock, you got plenty of wing space, so you can do the whole show. That's the A show. The E show is what I call the concert version, where you just have the actors and maybe the music, and it may not be orchestra, it could just be recorded music, where you just have what's like a concert, because there's not enough fly space, there's not enough wing space. But again, the producer has to make money, and there's a venue that's willing to pay for it. So a lot of times you'll walk into a venue, and a lot of times it's not necessarily because the venue isn't suitable, it's because you don't have the 30 hours to install. You arrive late, or you only have 4 hours to set up a show, and so you go with the e-show because that's the only one you have time to do. But one of the first calls that the company manager and the stage manager and the touring agent, the production manager, are going to make is which version of the show they're going to do. And trust me, you get very good at calling which version. Rarely do you say we're going to do the B show and then winding up doing the C show, because again, you just go for the show you know you can accomplish when you first walk in the venue. The problems you're going to walk into are going to be obvious. Yes, the C show again is halfway between everything and nothing. The B show is almost everything except maybe some major scenic elements that may be too heavy or not fit on the fly lines, that sort of stuff. The D show is sort of the concert version plus all the props and maybe a couple of chairs and tables and things. So again, there's one of the things you're going to do as a production manager, as a stage manager, as a company manager, if you're on tour, is walk into the venue, and even though the venue may have paid the high dollar A price for the show, if they don't have enough fly lines, or if the battens aren't long enough, there's all kinds of reasons why you don't do the A show, because the theater can't fit it. Yes, that's the biggest reason. Time is another one. You may not have enough time to set up between now and the time of the actual show. Yes. Again, there will be, with all tours, there's going to be some element of the touring show that is going to be in-house. In other words, you're going to have the technical director, the lighting designer, the master electrician, the deck crew manager, the stage manager, the prop manager. All those people are going to be with the tours, but you're also going to have a local crew. And again, with a national tour, it's going to be somewhere around 60 to 80 people that are going to be a part of the wardrobe crew or the scene shift crew or the flymen or all that sort of stuff. If you walk in the door and you're expecting a crew of 60, let's say, and you have 40, that's a great reason to say, you know what? You don't have enough people here, we're not doing the A show. If the call is 60, you got 40, there's no way we can do this without 20 people missing. Generally, there is a fine that the local provider of labor will have to pay. A lot of times there's I'm gonna call it a slush fund, but it could be a beer fund that money will roll into because when the local company is short people, then the people who are on the tour have to work harder. And so again, it's just nice to funnel that money that the theater has to pay to the company back into the labor that you have, and make them feel appreciated for the extra work they've had to do. Yes, if that makes any sense. But again, First National, generally you're not going to have that problem, because there's going to be plenty. You're in large cities with large numbers of people to work around and all that sort of stuff. The B tour is what I'm going to call a regional tour. A regional tour is often, sometimes produced by a local theater, like the Springer Opera House might produce a show and then take it on tour. But usually there's a production company that's in charge of that. They're mostly what come to Montgomery, where you will have Candlelight International, for instance, do a tour of Cats or whatever it is, and it literally goes from place to place to place, and every night is a different venue. Again, the logistics behind regional tours is paramount, because again, just to give you a sense of your day, at 8 o'clock, let's say, is when load-in begins, the door to the theater opens, you have a local crew of 25 to 40 people that are supposed to be there. Again, the first thing you have to do is unload trucks, and typically on a regional tour, it'll be 3 trucks or less. Generally, it's 1 truck. Everything's on 1 truck. If you travel with sound and lights, it may be 2 trucks. If the sound and light is extensive, it could be 3 trucks. But that's a regional tour is far less trucks. Again, the national tour we talked about with Wicked had 13 trucks. There's a tour out there with Phantom that has 30 trucks. So it just, depending on the size of the scale of the production, you may have an enormous number of trucks that are around. But again, a regional tour, 2 or 3 trucks. You're going to typically unload costumes, because again, it's just easier to get the costumes to the costume shops without having to deal with getting around scenery or around lighting that may be in the way, sound that might be in the way. Generally, most tours, the laundry has just been thrown in the hampers and the laundry is dirty when it arrives at the new venue. And so the first thing that has to happen is the costumes have to be washed. And so the first thing the wardrobe crew is going to do is take the clothes to the washing machines and wash all the clothes and dry all the clothes and iron all the clothes. So that's what they're doing on setup. Again, depending upon which is the most in the way, you may do, whether you do sound or lights or the theater, the stage, it depends upon what you need to get out of the way. A lot of times, most regional tours don't travel with their own sound. They'll use the house sound, unless the house sound is just horrific. In which case they'll have some arrays of speakers that you may have to hang, or that there may be some rigging points you have to do. So again, if that's going to be a part of it, that's going to take time. Get that out of your way, rig the stuff. Anything that flies is the next thing again. And then again, anything that's on the deck is the last thing you're going to install. Most touring houses don't allow you to screw or any way mar the floor of the stage. And so finding ways to secure things, wagons, brakes, that sort of things without having to drill holes into the floor is a big thing with tours. Trying to find ways to make things hit a mark, hit their spikes. So a lot of people will have a marley floor that they will lay out with the spike marks already laid out, especially if there are a lot of spike marks. Again, but you may need to spend some time finding center as a stage manager, and then putting all the spike marks for all the pieces that are going to be in the show. Again, that wants to happen between 8 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon, because around 1, you're going to need to focus lights for a couple of hours. Around 3, the actors are going to arrive, and you're going to start spacing. They're going to start going to the costume shop, figuring out how to access the stage. So as a stage manager, one of the things that you will often do is create signage that will say things like stage right with an arrow, or stage left with an arrow, or the orchestra pit, or whatever the actors need to find front of house. If you have an entrance from the front of house, how do you get there? Sometimes the answer is you go outside. Yes, sometimes there is no access to a certain space. Dressing rooms, right, left, all that sort of stuff. So assigning actors to dressing rooms, again, a lot of times is a part of their writers on their contracts as to who has bigger dressing rooms or smaller dressing rooms. And a lot of times, theaters don't have dressing rooms the size and shape you're supposed to have, or the private dressing rooms you're supposed to have. So again, it can be a point of consternation, let's just say. So a lot of times stage management may need to hang drapes or curtains or that sort of thing. You may need to assist props by hanging wardrobe change booths, or help with costumes with that. So again, a stage manager's job during the load-in can shift a lot, but the biggest thing is coordinating hours, making sure the local company is paid, and having a track of the local labor, but also keeping a track of the labor that you're on tour with, because those people need to have lunch, they need to have dinner, they need to be well rested for the show that night. And so, alternating crews, sometimes coordinating all that sort of stuff becomes the stage manager's duty. The third type of tour is what I'm gonna call a bus and truck tour. It is one bus and one truck. Again, these are nightly venues. A lot of times it's just concert venues or comedians, that sort of thing. The shows tend to be simple. They tend to be just a lot of times they're just musical review kind of shows. A lot of these things are kids shows, where you will come in and do a morning show at a theater or go to a high school, that sort of stuff. But you literally have one bus, and usually the bus has everybody, the actors, the crew, everybody. You'll have one truck, and a lot of times it's a rider, like 24-foot rider truck that has everybody's costumes and all the props. In that situation, I can guarantee you're not traveling with a lot of lights. You may have like 2 tree stands with 4 lights each, just in case you're in some places that don't have any lights. You may have a microphone with a little speaker on it attached to it, but there's not a lot of sound involved. But they're made to be quick and dirty and in and out. For instance, the Montgomery Ballet does the Nutcracker, and it all fits into a 24-foot ride. And the actors and the dancers are all responsible for their own transportation from Montgomery to wherever the venue is. So there's not even a bus, it's just a truck. Now, let's talk about buses. We sort of skipped over. If you're on a national tour, you're usually going to stay at a hotel for the run of the show, which is great. If you're on a regional tour, you're usually, as a crew member, you're going to be sleeping with other crew members on a bus. There typically are 12 bedrooms on a normal touring bus. And what I mean by a bedroom is that if you've ever been on a train, they're triple stacked. So you'll have 6 sleeping compartments to the left and 6 sleeping compartments to the right. There'll be a lower bunk, a middle bunk, and an upper bunk. Again, some of them have 2 bunks and only 8 in a bus. That's nicer because you got a little bit more room. But you're going to have to coordinate with the other people on the tour as to who gets which bunk. There'll be a sort of in the middle of the bus, there's a place that has a refrigerator and a stove of sorts, but again, you're on a bus, so I wouldn't call it fine dining, but there's a little couch and a little TV for you to relax. There are certainly rules that you will come up with your other crew members about visitors. They're usually frowned upon, unless everybody gets a visitor. The thing I did not mention about these buses, while there is a toilet on them, there is not a shower on them. So one of the things, if you're on a regional tour or a bus and truck tour, oftentimes at the end of the run of the show, as you finish packing up, it's often nice to run down to the dressing room and take a little shower. Take an extra set of clothes and go down there before anybody can say yes, no, or maybe. Take a 10-minute quickie shower, at least you're clean. You can dry off on the bus. But that can be a challenge on those type of tours where if you're in the company of actors on a regional tour, you still will probably get to have a hotel room because you have while the crew is setting up the stage from 8 in the morning until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you can be sleeping, yes, as an actor. And typically actors ride on normal buses with normal seats, which you can sleep in, but a lot of times, it's hard because sleeping on a bus is vertical. But again, those are the type of conditions you'll run into in regional tours and bus and truck tours. The other type of tour is what I'm gonna say is a local tour, where you're just literally going from where you are to where the venue is and then back, all in one day. Again, does that mean there's something like the ballet, you can have a bus and a truck maybe? More often is what we do, where we have a rider truck and everybody follows along in a caravan, and then you go there and you come back. Again, it's not usually professional. Usually it's more high school and or a college, or maybe a community theater that is participating in a regional festival or that sort of thing. But again, those are the 4 types of tours that you will run into. Each of them has their own specific advantages, specific disadvantages. One of the great rules about touring, in most instances, you will get this thing called per diem. Per diem. What per diem is? Per diem is money that the company will pay you to cover your living expenses. If you are on a First National tour and you're getting per diem, you're getting probably, let's say you're going to stay in Los Angeles, and the company wants you to stay at a hotel that is near the theater, and those hotels run $400 a night-ish. So let's say you've got 7 nights in a week and you're there for a month. Let's say that's, what is that, $2,800 a week, $3,000 a week. So you're getting $12,000 just to pay for your hotel room each week on a national tour. Let's say you don't mind sharing a room with 1 or 2 or 3 other people. Each of you is getting $12,000 a month to rent your room for the hotel. Now, that's free money. Hello? That's not pay, that's reimbursement for expense that you're expected to have. In addition to money that they're going to pay you for your housing, they will pay you money for your food, based upon, again, how much food in that area will cost. And producers sort of have a formula for that. Obviously, I'm going to say you can eat in Montgomery, Alabama for less than it would cost you to eat in Los Angeles, California. I don't know that, but that's my guess. I'm going to say per diem in Los Angeles might be $100 a day. In Montgomery, it might be $35 a day. Yes? But but that's in addition to your housing per diem. So you're getting food, about $100 a day, 30 days in a month, another $3,000. Now again, let's say you don't mind peanut butter and jelly sandwiches that you can eat, that you're not spending $100 a day, but you don't have to give receipts. Because these are companies that are just giving you that per diem as part of your contract. Yes, so that is one of the main reasons why a lot of times on national tours of shows, you may actually have a bigger star on the national tour than you have on Broadway, because the person who's on national tour is making $15,000 a month in per diem, which A, they're not spending all of it, and B, that means they're not having to spend their salary, and they can sublet their apartment in New York. Now, could they stay in New York? Sure, but then you're buying your own food, you're buying your own rent, and you're not getting anything for subletting your apartment. So you can, as an actor, make a lot more money actually touring on the First National than you can at home. Now, per diem rates are not as generous on regional tours and probably non-existent on local tours. But I'm gonna say, for instance, when we travel to ACTF, Auburn University Montgomery will buy your lunches and pay for your hotel rooms. Now, we're not gonna give you a daily rate, we're not gonna give you a rate for a hotel, we're just gonna pay for it. And so whatever it is that you eat, or whatever it is that you cost for your housing, we'll pay for that. Now, I'm gonna tell you a little story. There may be some rumors out there that I have a temper. And more often than not, believe it or not, the times that it erupts is more often than not has been over to-go boxes. And I'm gonna tell you why. The very first year I was here, our show was entered into the regional festival and went. And so I was a young man of 30, and we had a company of 25, 30 people, whatever, and we went to whatever regional festival we went to. And I said, hey, the university is paying for your food. And people were ordering steak dinners and ordering ribeyes and all this stuff. Great, whatever. The university didn't say they're paying for your food. They said they weren't paying for the drinks, so I made sure that nobody drank anything. But I said, just whatever you buy, give me the receipt. So people were buying excessive amounts of food, getting to-go boxes. Great. I get back, I turn in the receipts, and the person who was the accountant for the university at the time said, oh, I'm sorry, there's no way these people can eat that much food. We're not paying for any of it. So I wound up paying for every dollar of that tour for every dollar that people ate, which I am more than happy to do in most instances. But 30 people for a week at 30 years old was a little out of my pay grade. And so the rule became no to-go boxes. Whatever you order, great, but you gotta eat all of it in the restaurant. Then it became just people who broke the rule by thinking, oh, I'm too cute, he won't be mad at me. One of the worst one was when one of the servers, everyone had ordered their meal, and the server noticed that there were a lot of people who had extra food on their plate and put it upon themselves to bring out this stack of to-go boxes and announced into the room of 30 of us, who needs to-go boxes? And initially I laughed until several people said, I'll take one. Where Mike's exploded a little bit at those people. You can see the wind running through their hair, as it were. Because the rule is no to-go boxes, because that means I might have to pay for it at the end. Does that make sense? Hopefully it makes sense. It makes sense to me in a sane state. Trust me, when I get mad, there is no sanity involved in any of that. So follow the rules, whatever the rules may be. Now, I also know, this is a little secret, that I have a rumor for having a temper. And so there will be times when I will use that to my advantage by appearing to have lost my temper when I'm in perfect control, and I just know that people are freaking out because I raise my voice, which I occasionally will do. At any rate, you need to have a load-in schedule. You need to have, with all of these events, you're gonna have the normal show is gonna be the normal show, and then you also need to know how your vehicle is packed. And so here's one of the suggestions I would make. No matter which tour you're on, national, First National, regional, local, whatever it is, as you load the truck, take a picture of it, print a picture of it, and paste it to either side of the truck, so that you can then, when you load that part in, look at the picture and say, oh, I'm missing these boxes. Now, let me see if I can explain this. It'd be awful nice. And trust me, on a first national tour, you often can number the boxes in the right sequence because you only load them up once every month, and they've got enough money to actually buy the boxes that fit the pieces of scenery and the costumes, etc., for that thing. And so you'll have, what do you need? I need box number 1. I need box number 2. It's great because that's all you say is you line them up in the theater. Everybody knows what difference between 5, 6, 7, 8. Great. The problem on most regional tours, especially our local tours, is that the boxes you have may be from the Wicked National Tour 5 years ago, and that somebody just found. And so you'll have a Wicked number 17 box, and you'll have a Fiddler number 25 box, and you'll have something that just says PD, and you're like, there's no rhyme or reason to the boxes. And so that's where you as a stage manager can come up with your list that does create some sort of order. What I need is the box number 17 from Wicked. I need number 25 from Fiddler. I need the box that says PD. Those are the boxes that go on and they line up, right? And so organizing that will help the flow, and then having those pictures in your cabin of your truck or the wagon will help you to know that you've got all the pieces before you move on to the next loading step. Yes, you'll also have load bars that have to go in. Usually there's a load crew that's a part of the local crew that'll help load and manage all those sort of things. If you're lucky, the loading dock is the same height as the back of your trailer. If you're unlucky, you're gonna have to come and take the load off onto the ground and then take it someplace else. Those are pains in the butt. But most theaters have designed their loading dock to be the height of a normal 53-foot trailer, if you have that. And so, for instance, Ryder trucks are that height, but if you've got a U-Haul truck, the truck is not gonna be the same height as your loading dock. So again, a couple years ago, we went to Americus, Georgia, and there was no loading dock. You just loaded off onto the ground, and then you gotta rumble over the asphalt and all that sort of stuff. That was crazy. A lot of times the local crew will be segregated into, you'll have 8 electricians and 8 carpenters and 4 prop people and 4 wardrobe people and 2 spot operators, and those people have to be those things because that's a local union rule. A lot of places, Montgomery, Alabama being one, where we don't have union rules like that, you can intermingle the crew, right? And so again, as a stage manager, a lot of times you'll have wristbands that may be color coded. They'll say things like the red people are the carpenter people, and the blue people are the sound people, and the yellow people are the prop people. Yes, and so it's just easy to go through and pull out wristbands, and that way you don't have to actually know people's names. You can just say, I need all the carpenters here, and all the people with red wristbands show up. Yes, and that way you can also keep account of the local crew and know that nobody's switching back and forth and hiding in numbers amongst them. Yes, so that's a nice little trick for that. Plan breaks. Generally every 2 hours, you want to have a coffee break, coffee donuts, that sort of thing. Again, I would what we call stagger lunches, so that work can continue in the space. Again, whether the props or the set people take a lunch break early, or the lighting and sound take their break early. Typically, and again, I'm not saying that those are always linked together, but typically those groups go together. You have the electrics and sound people that are working about the same pace, and the carpentry and prop people are working about the same pace. And so one of them you break at noon for an hour, and then that way the lighting and sound people can work around without having the set people and the prop people there. And then when the lighting and sound people go to lunch at 1, the set and the prop people can continue to work on the stage without having to worry about getting in the way of the lighting and sound people. So again, staggering lunches is often a nice way to help accommodate those sort of things. Again, once the actors arrive, you need to make sure they've all signed in. Again, you need to take care of things like people who are sick or injured. Make sure the understudies are announced or figured out early. Allow the actors to, again, have placed your signs as to how to access different places, move about the space, get down to the orchestra pit, all that sort of stuff. You may have, there's a term called a sitz probe. A sitz probe is where you just have musicians play and the cast sings with the orchestra, but they're not doing any blocking or any staging. If you're going into a venue that is a big difference in size than you normally perform in, So let's say you normally perform in 500 to a 500 to 750 size house, and you're suddenly in a 3,000 seat auditorium. It may be worth just having a sits probe, where you can just sit there and have the sound people, mic up the actors and have everybody sing at full voice and do whatever, but they don't have to worry about movement or any of the other stuff, because all you're doing is figuring out the sound that's in the space. Also, the opposite is also true. Let's say you're used to being in a 3,000 seat auditorium and suddenly you're in a 100 seat theater. Obviously the sound is going to be different, and so it may be worth having what's called a sits probe to help to figure out the sound separately from the rest of the run of the show. There are once the show is over, obviously you have to get the show back on the trucks. There are these people who drive trucks who are called truck drivers. They are a member of a union as well, and they have certain rules about the number of hours they can drive in a day. And so one of the big logistical things that you have to deal with is that a lot of times trucks aren't available for a certain hour because you haven't let the bus driver or the truck driver off enough. So again, this is a lot of complicated things that's in addition to the show. But a lot of times, once the driver for the bus drops the cast off at 4 in the afternoon, let's say, you can't have that driver back for an 8-hour period. The next time that bus driver can be called is at midnight. Now, the great thing about this is that money solves everything. People are like, oh, you're willing to pay overtime or a couple $100 extra? Sure, I can do that. And if you have a nice bus driver or a nice truck driver that will be glad to take a young lady to a grocery store or something, that's great. But a lot of times what you're going to have to do is find a local crew person to drive the truck driver or the bus driver to a hotel from the afternoon, from about 4 o'clock in the afternoon or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, whatever time they get picked up, and then pick them up from the hotel at 11 or 12 that night. But again, it's just something else you have to think about, is taking care of the drivers to your trucks and buses. Now, if you're a national tour, you've had a month off in between the load-in, that's not going to be an issue. But on local tours where you've got a day stop, a lot of times taking care of the truck driver is something that can fall between the cracks. Now, having said that, the pack of a truck is a truck driver's responsibility. Once you close that door, if something were to shift and cause the trailer to flip or something like that on the road, the truck driver is the person responsible. So despite how you may have planned to load that truck, you may find a truck driver who has a different opinion about how the truck is loaded. It is the truck driver's load. The truck driver is going to win. Yes? Now, a lot of times it's important for you to understand why decisions were made, especially if you have PD cable. Is electrical cable that's used to supply large amounts of electricity to different pieces of equipment. It's heavy, it's bulky, there's a lot of it. Steel cable used to fly things is heavy, bulky, and there's a lot of it. A lot of times those particular items want to be center of the trailer over the top of the pinpoint of the truck in the front, so that you don't have too much weight in the back. A lot of times they may be the last things available to be packed though, because the steel may be the thing that is holding the motors up. And so you literally will have everything in the show ready to go into the truck, but you gotta wait for the steel to get in the truck first. Who says so? The truck driver says so. Now, if the truck driver doesn't care, sure, load the rest of the truck. Again, you're not trying to flip the truck, but again, you may come into a situation where you may have a different opinion about how a truck is loaded. The truck driver wins by necessity. On your tour, you're gonna have, let's call it a suitcase. You have personal items. You may actually go to a theater where you want to buy a souvenir, let's say. Again, those things need to be, you're gonna wind up wearing a lot of black t-shirts and a lot of black pants. You're gonna have a lot of black in your wardrobe. As stage manager, that's what you wear backstage. It's dark, it's unseen. You are lucky if you only need one shirt in a day. because that means you have to do less laundry. But laundry, as I said, when we talked about competition, when we talked about summer stock and working outdoor theater, laundries are few and far between. So having a duffel bag stuffed with your black t-shirts and your black pants, and your comfortable shoes, good Lord, comfortable shoes, steel-toed shoes, good Lord, steel-toed shoes. And that's an art. Finding comfortable steel-toed shoes is an art. But trust me, when something falls on your foot, you're gonna be very happy it's steel-toed. And trust me, after a tour of a couple months, you're gonna be very happy you have shoes that are comfortable. Yes. So again, those are the type of things you want to be prepared for. Having some sort of ball cap and or do-rag or something that means you don't have to do your hair first thing in the morning is invaluable, because you can save that extra 30 minutes or 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever it is by what's called sleeping. Again, you're going to find that if you have correct logistics, you'll have a time to sleep for 8 hours. That things get in the way of traffic gets in the way of it, local crews get in the way of it, any number of things can get in the way of it. So again, having a local place where you can maybe do your laundry while you're taking your shower after the show is ideal. Having a bus driver who will take you to get your laundry done at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when he drops the actors off. And again, you can rotate your crew and have some of your crew do it on Monday, some of your crew do it on Tuesday, Monday typically is a day off again. But on tour, maybe not. Again, on tours, the rule is 19 days in a row. Generally on tours, you can't, every 19 days you have to have a break. Again, not so much on First National. First Nationals you're gonna have every Monday off. But on regional tours, they can tour you up to 19 days in a row, according to OSHA, before you have to have a day off. So again, there's just rules you're gonna have to find that you come in contact with. Personal care, though, is something that sometimes you just need a moment. Sometimes that moment happens in the middle of the afternoon. Naps are great. If you have an hour, take one. If you have an hour and a washing machine is available, put some load laundry in first and then take a nap. But personal care and feeding is something that all of you need to be aware of. And there will be people who you can see are at the end of the rope. It may be worth saying, you know what, take an hour, take a break. Especially, people who are wired strenuously. So anyway, there's some insight into touring. Again, every tour is gonna be different. Every crew is gonna be different. You're gonna find crew members, if you ever get a chance to tour with people, they will become the friends for the rest of your life. You're gonna constantly work with these people over and over again as you both mature in the theater industry. I would encourage anybody to take a tour. It is an eye-opening experience, and you get to see a lot of the world. Obviously, national tour, you'll see more of the world. But at least you'll get to meet and greet some people that are not from around here. So enjoy your touring, and we'll talk to you next time.